Chapter 1. A House Divided. The morning sun crept through the faded curtains of the Thompson family's suburban kitchen, casting a pale light that did little to warm the cold tension that hung in the air. Elena, a 32-year-old woman with tired hazel eyes and a tightly bound ponytail, stood at the counter, her hands moving with mechanical precision. She sliced bread, flipped eggs in the sizzling pan, and poured coffee into chipped mugs, but a faint tremble in her fingers betrayed the storm of emotions she kept locked inside. The scent of breakfast warm toast and brewing coffee filled the room, yet it could not mask the unease that had woven itself into the very walls of the house. Elena, clad in a worn blue blouse, brushed a strand of dark hair from her sweat-dampened forehead. Her mind was already racing through the day's endless tasks, dropping the kids at school, rushing to her part-time accounting job, fetching Margaret's heart medication, and preparing a dinner that would meet her mother-in-law's exacting standards. One misstep, and she would face a barrage of criticism. For 7 years, she would lived under Margaret Thompson's roof, and not a single day had passed without a reminder of her supposed inadequacy. The thud of heavy footsteps on the staircase announced Margaret's arrival, each step a warning like the toll of a bell. At 65, Margaret was a commanding figure, silver hair pulled into a severe bun, gray eyes sharp as knives, and a voice that could cut through any semblance of peace. "Elena," she snapped, striding into the kitchen. "Is breakfast ready, or are you wasting time again, letting my grandchildren starve?" Elena bit her lip, forcing a tight smile that felt more like a grimace. "It is almost ready, Mother," she said softly, her voice laced with practiced restraint. She plated the eggs with care, poured coffee into Margaret's favorite porcelain cup, and arranged the toast in a neat stack, bracing herself for the inevitable onslaught. No matter how hard she tried, Margaret always found fault. Margaret entered, her gaze sweeping the kitchen with undisguised contempt.
Dressed in a crisp grey cardigan.
She leaned slightly on a polished cane, a prop she wielded more for authority than necessity. "Almost is not good enough," she said, settling into her chair at the head of the table like a queen on her throne. "My medication demands a precise schedule."
"If it suffit because of your laziness, Elena, the blame will fall squarely on you."
The words hit like a lash, each one a variation of the same insults Elena had endured for years. Useless, incompetent, unworthy. They stung, even now, reopening wounds that never fully healed. She wanted to scream, to demand why her efforts, working long hours, raising 2 children, catering to Margaret's every whim, were never enough. But she knew arguing would only fuel Margaret's anger. So she lowered her eyes, focusing on the tablecloth's frayed edge, swallowing the bitter resentment that threatened to choke her. "I am sorry, Mother," she whispered, barely audible.
"You will do better."
Margaret huffed, her lips curling in disdain. "Do better? I doubt you are capable. Honestly, I can't fathom why David chose someone so inadequate. He deserves a wife who can run a proper household." Elena's hands clenched beneath the table, her nails digging into her palms until they left crescent-shaped marks. She wanted to shout that she would sacrifice her dreams, a master's degree, a career in finance, a life of her own to be a wife and mother in this family. But Margaret would never care. To her, Elena was an interloper, a failure who'd never measure up. The tension broke as David entered, his presence a fleeting distraction. At 35, he was tall and impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his brown hair neatly combed for his day at the law firm. He kissed Margaret's cheek, his smile warm and genuine. "Morning, Mom. How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Margaret's demeanor softened instantly, her sharp edges melting in her son's presence. "Oh, the usual aches, dear," she said, patting his hand. "I will manage, as long as certain people do not make my life harder than it needs to be." She shot a pointed glance at Elena, her eyes narrowing. David nodded, then took his seat, unfolding the morning newspaper with a rustle. He barely acknowledged Elena, missing the way her hands shook as she set his coffee before him. "She is trying, Mom," he said absently, his eyes scanning the headlines.
Elena est à 5.
His words were not a defense, they were an afterthought, a weak attempt to placate without taking a stand. David never challenged Margaret, never saw the toll her cruelty took on
Elena.
His silence was a betrayal, a crack in their marriage that grew wider with each passing day. She would once loved him deeply, his quiet charm, his promises of a shared future, but now, he felt like a stranger who left her to face the storm alone. The sound of children's laughter burst into the room, a brief reprieve. Lily, 8, with golden curls tied in a messy ponytail, and Max, 6, with boundless energy, bounded into the kitchen. "Mummy, can I have jam on my toast?" Lily asked, climbing onto her chair with a grin. Max, meanwhile, spun in circles, nearly knocking over a glass. "I am gonna draw a T-Rex at school today," he declared, his voice bubbling with excitement. Elena's face softened, her smile genuine for the first time that morning. "Of course, Lily, I will get the strawberry jam." "And Max, that sounds amazing." She tousled his hair, her heart swelling with love. Her children were her lifeline, the reason she endured Margaret's abuse and David's indifference. For them, she would do anything. But the moment of warmth was short-lived. "Elena, these eggs are overdone," Margaret said, shoving her plate away with a scowl. "And this coffee is barely drinkable."
Can't you get anything right?
Elena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the counter. She took a deep breath, fighting the urge to snap. "I will make fresh coffee," she said, her voice trembling.
Don't bother, Margaret spat.
"You will only waste more time, and the children will be late for school. Don't expect me to explain to their teachers why." Lily glanced at Elena, her small face creased with worry. "Mommy, are you okay?" she whispered, her hand brushing Elena's. Elena forced a smile, her throat tight.
"Ja, I'm fine, sweetheart. Eat your breakfast."
But she was not fine. The resentment was a fire growing inside her, and she feared it would soon burn out of control. She glanced at David, hoping for a flicker of support, but he was engrossed in his paper, oblivious to her pain. As she cleared the table, moving like a ghost in her own home, a single thought echoed in her mind: "I can't keep living like this." Chapter 2: The Weight of Expectations. After the strained breakfast, Elena hustled Lily and Max out the door, their small hands clutching lunchboxes as they scrambled into the car. She navigated the morning traffic, her mind drifting to a time before Margaret's relentless expectations had crushed her spirit. As a college student, she would dreamed of a thriving accounting career, a trip across Europe, a life brimming with freedom and possibility. She would earned a scholarship, sketched out grand plans, but then she met David, and everything shifted. She fell in love with his quiet charm, his ambition, and when he proposed, she believed they would build a joyful future together. But she had not anticipated Margaret, the mother-in-law who turned her marriage into a battlefield of pain and resentment. "Mommy, why does Grandma yell at you?" Lily asked from the back seat, her innocent voice cutting through Elena's thoughts like a blade. Elena's grip tightened on the steering wheel, her heart clenching. She did not want her children to see the cruelty behind Margaret's words, but she could not lie forever. "She is just stressed, sweetie," she said, her voice trembling as she searched for a gentle excuse. "She loves you and Max, but sometimes she is a bit grumpy." Lily nodded, but her eyes held a flicker of doubt. "I do not like it when she makes you sad," she murmured, turning to stare out the window, her small hands fidgeting with her seatbelt.
Lilies word pierst Elena sat.
She wanted to pull over, wrap her daughter in her arms, and promise everything would be okay, but she was not sure she could keep that promise. She managed a weak smile in the rearview mirror, her eyes stinging with unshed tears.
"Ja, I'm okay, honey. Don't worry."
But deep down, she knew Margaret's venom was not just hurting her, it was seeping into her children's lives, and that pain cut deeper than anything else. At the accounting firm, Elena found a fleeting refuge. The small office, with its beige walls, the soft hum of computers, and the faint aroma of coffee, was a place where she felt valued. Jane, her closest colleague, greeted her with a warm smile. "Elena, your report this week was phenomenal," Jane said, sliding a coffee across the table during their lunch break in the break room. "You should seriously consider applying for the manager position. They are looking, and you are perfect for it." Elena offered a faint smile, stirring her coffee without drinking. "Thanks, Jane, but I do not think I have the time," she said softly. How could she think of advancing her career when, at home, Margaret demanded she be the perfect housewife, maid, and caregiver? Margaret did not just expect her to cook, clean, and tend to the children, she insisted on personal tasks, like fetching her medication, brewing her tea just right, even hand-washing her precious handkerchiefs too delicate for the machine. "You are burning out," Jane said, her brown eyes filled with concern.
"You need time for yourself, Elena.
You can't keep living to please everyone else." Elena nodded, but the words felt like a distant fantasy she could not grasp. Taking care of herself, that was a luxury she would lost years ago, the moment she stepped into the Thompson household, and became the target of Margaret's scorn. She worked part-time to help pay the bills, to buy new clothes for Lily and Max, but to Margaret, it meant nothing. In her eyes, Elena was a failed wife, a burden to David. "Sometimes I wonder who I am even living for," Elena whispered, almost to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of the break room fridge. Jane reached across, squeezing her hand gently. "You are living for Lily and Max. And for yourself. Don't forget that, Elena." Jane's words were a small flicker of light in the darkness, but they were quickly extinguished when Elena returned home. Margaret sat in the living room, a teacup in hand, her sharp eyes locking onto Elena like a predator. "You are late," she snapped, her voice dripping with accusation. "I had to watch the children after school."
I am not your servant, Elena.
Elena felt a surge of heat in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm, though she wanted to scream that she was not Margaret's servant either. "I am sorry, Mother," she said, her voice low, each word feeling like a stone in her throat.
I will start dîner now. Dîner, Margaret's voice rose, venons-nous.
"The house is a mess, laundry's piling up, and you are out working. David needs a wife who can manage a home, not a woman chasing a job and letting."
Everything fall apart. The accusation hit Elena like a slap.
She worked to support the family, to cover expenses, to give Lily and Max a better life. But to Margaret, it was worthless. She retreated to the kitchen, starting on David's favorite beef stew, but Margaret's words echoed, each one a fresh wound. She chopped carrots and potatoes with sharp, forceful cuts, as if the knife could release the anger she did not dare voice, each slice a silent rebellion. That night, after tucking the children into bed, Elena resolved to confront David. She sat beside him on the couch, her heart pounding like a drum. She took a deep breath, summoning her courage, and began, her voice shaking but firm. "David, we need to talk about your mother. She is making me miserable. And you never do anything about it." David sighed, rubbing his temples, his eyes weary. "Can this wait, Elena? It has been a long day at the office."
No, it can't wait, Elena insisted, tears welling in her eyes. I work all day.
"I take care of the kids, I do everything she demands, but it is never enough. She insults me, calls me useless, and you never defend me. How can you let her treat me like this, David?" David's jaw tightened, his gaze turning cold. "My mother raised me alone after Dad died," he said, his voice hard.
She sacrificed everything for me, Elena.
"You knew she would be part of our lives.
When we got married.
She is family." "I did not agree to be her punching bag," Elena cried, her voice breaking with anguish.
I can't live like this anymore. I need you to stand up for me, Justance.
"You are blowing this out of proportion," David said, his tone icy. "Just try to get along with her. For me. For the kids." His words snuffed out the last ember of hope in Elena's heart. She stood, tears streaming down her cheeks. "For you," she whispered, her voice thick with pain.
You never think of me, David.
Never. She turned away, hurrying to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands, sobbing into the darkness. Her cries mingled with the silence of the night, and in her heart, she wondered, how much longer can I endure this?
Chapter 3. À Counsel.
The Saturday morning air was crisp as Elena stepped into the cozy cafe on the edge of town, the bell above the door jingling softly. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries enveloped her, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere of the Thompson household. She spotted Sarah, her college friend, waving from a corner booth, her bright smile a beacon of warmth. For the first time in days, Elena felt a flicker of relief, though the weight of her troubles still pressed heavily on her shoulders. Sarah, with her curly auburn hair and vibrant energy, stood to hug her. "Elena, it has been too long," she said, her voice full of affection. "You look exhausted. What is going on?"
Elena managed a weak smile, sliding into the booth.
The cafe's soft jazz music and the clink of cups created a bubble of calm, a rare moment where she could let her guard down. She ordered a latte, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the menu. "It is everything," she admitted, her voice low.
Margaret. David, the kiziti soltumush.
Sarah's brow furrowed, her green eyes narrowing with concern. Tell me everything, she urged, leaning forward.
Don't hold back.
And so, Elena did. The words poured out like a dam breaking, each one carrying the pain she would bottled up for years. She told Sarah about Margaret's relentless criticism, how every meal was wrong, every chore inadequate. How she was called useless in front of her own children. She described David's indifference, how he dismissed her pleas for support, leaving her to face Margaret's wrath alone. She choked up as she recounted Lily's question about why Grandma was so mean, and how it broke her heart to see her daughter caught in the crossfire. I am trying so hard, Sarah, Elena said, her voice trembling as she clutched her coffee mug. I work, I take care of the kids, I do everything Margaret demands, but it is never enough. I feel like I am drowning, and David just watches. Sarah listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to anger. When Elena finished, she reached across the table, grasping her friend's hand. Elena, this is not a marriage, it is a prison, she said firmly. Margaret's abusing you, and David's enabling it. You do not deserve this. Elena's eyes welled with tears. I know it is bad, but I love him, Sarah. Or at least, I love who he used to be. And the kids Lily and Max need their father.
He can't just walk away.
Sarah shook her head, her voice gentle but resolute. Love is not enough when it is one-sided. David's not standing up for you, he is choosing his mother over you. And the kids, they are seeing their mother suffer. What kind of example is that setting for them? Elena stared into her latte, the foam swirling aimlessly. Sarah's words were a mirror, reflecting truths she would avoided for too long. She thought of Lily's worried eyes. Max's carefree laughter that she fought to protect. Was staying in this toxic home really best for them? You need to think about divorce, Sarah continued, her tone softening. Not because you have failed, but because you are worth more than this. You are smart, talented.
And stronger than you realize. You could start over. Give yourself and the keys a life free from Margaret's poison. The word divorce it Elena like a cold wave.
She would imagined it in fleeting, guilty moments, but hearing it aloud made it real, terrifying. I would lose everything, she whispered. The house, maybe even custody. Margaret has money, influence. She would fight me for the kids. Sarah squeezed her hand tighter. You won't know unless you try.
You are not alone, Elena.
You have me, your colleagues, your own strength.
And the kids need happy mother more than a broken home.
Elena's mind churned. She pictured a life without Margaret's voice echoing in her ears, without David's cold dismissals. She imagined mornings with Lily and Max, filled with laughter instead of tension. But the fear was a heavy anchor, fear of the unknown, of failing her children, of losing the man she still, against all reason, loved. The cafe bustled around them, waiters weaving between tables, but Elena felt suspended in time. I do not know if I am brave enough, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Sarah leaned closer, her eyes fierce with conviction. You are. You have survived 7 years of Margaret's abuse. You have raised 2 incredible kids while working and keeping that house together. You are not weak, Elena, you are a warrior. You just need to fight for yourself now. A tear slipped down Elena's cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, embarrassed.
What if he makes the wrong choice? What if he ruins everything?
You are already in ruins, Sarah said gently. The question is whether you stay there or start rebuilding.
Whatever you decide, Yaemir.
But do not let fear keep you trapped. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics: Sarah's new job, her disastrous attempt at baking, but Elena's thoughts lingered on that word, divorce.
A day parted way.
Sarah hugged her tightly. Promise me you will think about it, she said.
You deserve to be happy.
Elena nodded, stepping back into the chilly morning. The town buzzed around her, cars honking, pedestrians chatting, but she felt a strange clarity. For the first time in years. A spark of hope flickered within her, fragile but undeniable. She was not ready to decide, not yet. But Sarah's words had planted a seed, one that might grow into courage. As she drove home, the weight of her life felt just a fraction lighter, and she clung to that feeling, knowing it might be her lifeline.
Chapter 4, The Breaking Point. Chapter 4, The Breaking Point.
The Thompson household was a powder keg, and Sunday dinner was the spark. Elena moved through the kitchen with the precision of someone who'd learned to navigate a minefield. She stirred the creamy mashed potatoes, checked the roast in the oven, and set the dining table with Margaret's prized china, each action a desperate attempt to avoid criticism. But the air was thick with tension, and Elena's nerves were frayed from Sarah's words echoing in her mind. You are worth more than this. She wanted to believe it, but the weight of 7 years under Margaret's rule made hope feel
like a cruelties.
Lily and Max sat at the table, coloring on scraps of paper, their laughter a fragile shield against the storm Elena knew was coming. Margaret entered, her silver hair glinting under the chandelier, her cane tapping ominously. She surveyed the table with a scowl. Elena, these napkins are wrinkled, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Can't you even set a proper table? Elena's jaw tightened, but she forced a calm reply. I will fix them, mother, she said, smoothing the napkins with trembling hands. She caught Lily's worried glance and flashed a reassuring smile, though her heart pounded. David arrived, loosening his tie after a late meeting, his face etched with fatigue. He kissed Margaret's cheek, then nodded curtly at Elena. Smells good, he mumbled, taking his seat without meeting her eyes. His indifference stung, a reminder of their failed confrontation days ago. As Elena served the meal, Margaret's scrutiny intensified. She poked at the roast, her lips pursing. This is dry, she declared, pushing her plate away, and the potatoes are lumpy. Honestly, Elena, do you even try? A real wife would take pride in her cooking.
Elena s'enfrose on the serving spoon, the familiar insulte cutting d'hyperden ever.
She glanced at Lily and Max, who had stopped coloring, their eyes wide with unease. I did my best, mother, she said, her voice low but shaking. I have been working all week, and... Your job is no excuse, Margaret snapped, her cane thumping the floor. You neglect this family, leaving me to pick up your slack. David deserves better than a lazy, incompetent wife who can't even cook a decent meal. The words exploded in Elena's chest like a grenade. Her vision blurred with rage and humiliation, years of suppressed pain surging to the surface. Stop it, she shouted, slamming the spoon onto the table.
The claté silençait the room.
And Lily gasped, clutching Max's hand. Margaret's eyes widened, then narrowed.
How dare you raise your voice to me, she said.
You ungrateful girl, living in my house, eating my food, and this is how you repay me.
Your house, Elena's voice trembled with fury.
I have worked myself to the bone for this family. I cook, I clean, I raise the kids, I pay the bills, and all you do is tear me down. I am done being your punching bag. David looked up, startled. Elena, calm down, he said, his tone sharp. Don't talk to Mom like that. His words were the final blow. Elena turned to him, tears streaming down her face. And you, she choked out.
You let her destroy me, David.
You never defend me, never care how much I am hurting.
I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce.
The room fell deathly silent. Lily's eyes filled with tears, and Max whimpered, clinging to his sister. David's face paled, his mouth opening but no words coming out. Margaret recovered first, her voice icy. A divorce. You think you can walk away and take my grandchildren?
I will fight you in court, Elena. You will lose everything those children belong with us.
Elena's heart lurched at the threat, but something inside her snapped free. She was not the broken woman who'd cowered under Margaret's insults for years. Sarah's voice echoed, You are a warrior. She straightened, wiping her tears. You can't scare me anymore, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her.
I am done living in your shadow.
Lily and Max deserve a mother who is whole, not broken by you. She turned to her children, kneeling beside them. I love you both so much, she whispered, kissing their foreheads. Mommy needs to do something brave. Okay, we will be together soon, I promise. Lily nodded, tears spilling, while Max hugged her tightly. Elena stood, her legs shaking but her resolve firm. She grabbed her purse and coat from the hall, ignoring Margaret's shouts. You will regret this, Margaret called after her.
You are nothing without us.
David finally spoke, his voice hoarse.
Elena, ouais.
We can talk about this. She paused at the door, looking back at the man she would once loved. You had years to talk, David, she said quietly.
You chose silence.
With that, she walked out into the cool evening, the door slamming behind her like a gunshot. The street was quiet, the stars faint above the suburban sprawl. Elena's breath hitched as she climbed into her car, her hands trembling on the wheel. Fear and relief battled within her, fear of the
incertain futur,
relief at finally breaking free. She thought of Lily and Max, their faces etched in her mind, and vowed to fight for them with everything she had. As she drove towards Sarah's apartment, the only place she could think to go, a single thought anchored her: this is the end of my silence.
Chapter 5, à New Beginning.
The faint hum of traffic filtered through the cracked window of Elena's new apartment, a modest one-bedroom tucked above a bakery in the heart of town. Sunlight streamed onto the worn wooden floor, illuminating the sparse furnishings: a second-hand couch, a small dining table, and a mattress still wrapped in plastic. It was not much, but to Elena, it was a sanctuary. For the first time in years, she woke without the dread of Margaret's voice or David's indifference. The silence was unfamiliar, almost unsettling, but it carried a promise of peace she had not known she could reclaim. It had been 2 weeks since she had walked out of the Thompson house, her heart pounding with fear and resolve. Sarah had welcomed her that night, offering her couch and fierce encouragement. But Elena knew she needed her own space. With savings scraped together from her part-time job, she would sign the lease, her hands trembling as she penned her name. The apartment was a symbol of her defiance. A step toward rebuilding the life Margaret had tried to crush. Elena stood at the kitchen counter, brewing coffee in a chipped mug, her mind replaying the chaos of that Sunday dinner. Margaret's threats echoed: you will lose everything, but they no longer paralyzed her. She thought of Lily and Max, their tearful faces as she would left, and her chest ached. Custody arrangements were pending, a battle she knew would be brutal, but she clung to the promise she would made them: we will be together soon. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Jane, her colleague, holding a potted plant and a grin. "Housewarming gift," Jane announced, stepping inside. "This place is adorable, Elena. It is all yours, and that is what matters." Elena smiled, setting the plant on the windowsill. "Thanks, Jane. It is a start." They sat on the couch, sipping coffee, and Jane's presence eased the loneliness that had crept in. "How are you holding up?" Jane asked, her tone gentle. "It is hard," Elena admitted, her fingers tracing the mug's rim.
I miss the keys every second.
"But being here, away from Margaret, it is like I can breathe again." Jane nodded.
You are stronger than you know.
"And speaking of strength, the boss was raving about your last project. They are pushing for you to take the manager role."
Full time, better pay.
"You in?" Elena hesitated. The offer was tempting, a chance to secure her future, but it meant longer hours, less time with Lily and Max during her custody days. Still, financial stability could strengthen her case in court. "I will think about it," she said, a spark of ambition flickering. "I want to be there for the kids, but I need to stand on my own too." That afternoon, Elena drove to pick up Lily and Max for their first weekend together. Her heart raced as she pulled up to the Thompson house, the familiar brick facade looming like a fortress. David opened the door, his face haggard, eyes avoiding hers. "They are ready," he said curtly, stepping aside. Lily and Max ran out, their faces lighting up. "Mommy," Max shouted, throwing his arms around her. Lily hugged her tightly, whispering, "I missed you so much." Elena's eyes stung as she held them close, their warmth grounding her. "Be good," David said to the kids, his voice flat. He glanced at Elena, a flicker of something regret, maybe in his eyes, but he said nothing. She nodded, guiding the children to the car, her heart heavy but resolute. Back at the apartment, Elena transformed the small space into a haven. She would bought cheap fairy lights and strung them across the living room, giving it a cozy glow. They baked cookies together, flour dusting Max's nose as he giggled, and Lily proudly decorated hers with sprinkles. After dinner pizza on paper plates, they curled up on the couch, watching a cartoon, the kids nestled against her. "Mommy, are we gonna live here forever?" Max asked, his voice sleepy. Elena kissed his forehead.
For now, sweetheart.
"But wherever we are, we will always have each other." Lily looked up, her eyes serious. "Grandma says you left because you do not love us. Is that true?"
Elena is sad twisted.
She pulled Lily closer, her voice firm. "No, baby. I left because I love you and Max more than anything. I needed to make a safe place for us, where we can be happy. Grandma. She is wrong about a lot of things." Lily nodded, snuggling closer, and Elena felt a surge of determination. Margaret's lies would not poison her children's minds. She would fight for them, no matter the cost. The weekend flew by, filled with board games, walks to the park, and bedtime stories. When Elena dropped the kids back at David's, her heart ached, but their smiles lingered in her mind. She returned to the apartment, the silence louder now, and sat at the table, pulling out a notebook. She would started therapy. A suggestion from Sarah, and her therapist had encouraged her to write down her goals. She wrote, "Be a strong mother for Lily and Max, win custody. Build a career I am proud of. Find myself again." The words felt like a vow, a map for the uncertain road ahead. Monday morning, Elena walked into the office with a new resolve. She met with her boss, accepting the manager position. "I am ready," she told him, her voice steady. The promotion meant more responsibility, but also a chance to prove she was more than Margaret's punching bag. As she left work, her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, "Proud of you.
You are unstoppable."
Elena smiled, the words warming her. The road ahead was daunting. Court dates loomed, and Margaret's threats were far from empty, but for the first time, Elena felt like she was moving forward.
Not juste surviving.
She glanced at the potted plant on her windowsill, its green leaves catching the light, and thought, "This is my new beginning." Chapter 6, The Second Wife. 6 months had passed since Elena left the Thompson household, and the ripples of her departure still stirred unrest. In the grand dining room, now eerily quiet without Elena's steady presence, Margaret sat at the head of the table, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier. Her sharp eyes tracked David as he entered, his shoulders slumped, a shadow of the confident lawyer he would once been. Beside him stood Victoria, his new wife, her red lips curved in a smile that did not reach her calculating blue eyes. Victoria was a whirlwind, sweeping into David's life weeks after Elena's exit. At 30, she was striking tall, with sleek blonde hair and a charm that disarmed most. She would met David at a legal conference, her flattery and attention a balm to his bruised ego. Their courtship was swift, a whirlwind of dinners and promises, culminating in a small courthouse wedding that Margaret begrudgingly attended. But beneath Victoria's polished exterior lay a manipulative streak, one that was about to unsettle the fragile balance.
Off the Thompson home.
"Dinner smells divine," Victoria purred, settling into Elena's old chair, her silk dress rustling. She would insisted on hiring a caterer, dismissing Margaret's home-cooked traditions as quaint. Margaret's lips thinned, but she said nothing, her cane tapping restlessly. Lily and Max sat across from her, their faces drawn. They would return from a weekend with Elena, their laughter dimmed by the return to this tense household. "When can we see Mommy again?" Max asked, pushing peas around his plate. Victoria's smile tightened. "You just saw her, Max. Let us not bother Daddy with that now." Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes flashed with irritation. David cleared his throat, avoiding his son's gaze.
"Soon, buddy. Eat your dîner."
Margaret's cane thumped the floor. "The children need stability, David," she said, her voice icy. "This constant back and forth with her is disruptive." Victoria's laugh was sharp. "Oh, Margaret, they are fine. Kids adapt. Besides, I am here now, and I am more than capable of managing things." She reached for David's hand, her nails glinting.
Margaret sais narrowed.
She would never warm to Victoria, sensing her ambition from the start. Elena, for all her faults in Margaret's eyes, had been dutiful, predictable. Victoria was a wild card. And Margaret disliked being outmaneuvered in her own domain. "Managing," she said coolly. "You have barely lifted a finger since you moved in." The air crackled with tension. Victoria's smile did not waver, but her grip on David's hand tightened. "I bring other qualities, Margaret. David appreciates a wife who supports his career, not one who is always whining about housework." Lily's fork clattered onto her plate. "Mommy was not whining," she snapped, her voice trembling. "She did everything, and you are mean." "Lily," David barked, his face flushing. "Apologize to Victoria." "No," Lily's eyes filled with tears. "She is not my mom." She shoved her chair back and ran upstairs, Max scrambling after her. Victoria's face hardened, but she quickly masked it with a sigh. "Poor thing. She is just confused. I will talk to her later." Margaret stood, her cane steadying her. You will do no such thing, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Those children are my grandchildren, and I won't have you upsetting them. She turned to David. Control your wife, or I will. David rubbed his temples, caught between the two women. Mom, please.
Victoria, juste.
Give them time. Victoria shrugged, but her eyes glinted with something predatory. Over the next weeks, her true nature surfaced. She treated Lily and Max with cold indifference. Snapping at them for minor infractions, spilled juice, toys left out. Behind David's back, her words grew sharper. Stop moping about your mother, she would hiss when they mentioned Elena. Once, when Max cried after a call with Elena, Victoria grabbed his arm, her nails leaving faint marks. Grow up, she snapped, unaware Margaret had overheard from the hall. Margaret's dislike for Victoria turned to fury. She would never been warm, but her grandchildren were her line in the sand. She confronted David in his study, her voice cutting. Your wife is a snake, David. She is cruel to the children, and you are blind to it. David bristled. She is adjusting, Mom. It is not easy stepping into a family like this. Adjusting, Margaret scoffed. She is driving a wedge between you and your children. Elena was flawed, but she loved them. Victoria only loves herself. The tension boiled over one evening when David returned early from work. He found Victoria in the living room, shouting at Lily, who cowered on the couch. You are a spoiled brat, Victoria yelled, raising her hand. Before it could fall, Margaret's cane cracked against the floor, startling them. Get away from her, Margaret roared, her face pale with rage. David froze, his eyes widening as he took in the scene.
Victoria Spin, her composure sleeping.
She was being disrespectful. Liar, Lily sobbed, running to David. She said I can't talk about mommy anymore.
Davides face d'Arkened.
He looked from Lily's tear-streaked face to Victoria's defiant glare, then to Margaret, whose eyes burned with vindication. Is this true? He asked, his voice low. Victoria faltered, then straightened. She is exaggerating. I was just setting boundaries. But David's gaze shifted to Max, hovering in the doorway, his small frame trembling. Max, what happened?
Max's voice was barely a whisper.
She
Shiur tu es when you are not here.
The room seemed to still. David's hands clenched, and for the first time, he saw Victoria clearly not as the charming savior, but as a threat to his children. Pack your things, he said, his voice cold. We are done. Victoria's eyes widened, but she did not argue. She stormed upstairs, leaving a stunned silence. Margaret placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, a rare gesture of warmth. You are safe now, she murmured. David knelt before his children, guilt etching his face. I am so sorry, he whispered. I did not know. As Victoria's car peeled out of the driveway hours later, David sat alone in the dark, Margaret's words haunting him. Elena loved them. For the first time, he questioned his choices, wondering if he would lost more than he would realized when Elena walked away. Chapter 7. The Weight of Regret. The Thompson house felt hollow, its once imposing walls now echoing with the absence of Elena and the chaos Victoria had left behind. A month had passed since David ended his brief, disastrous marriage to Victoria, and the sting of his failure lingered. He sat in the dimly lit study, a glass of untouched whiskey in hand, staring at a photo of Lily and Max from happier times. Elena's smile radiant in the background. Regret gnawed at him, a relentless ache that grew sharper with each passing day. Margaret entered, her cane tapping softly, her face etched with a weariness David had not noticed before. At 65, she would always been a pillar of unyielding strength. But now her shoulders sagged, as if the weight of their mistakes pressed her down. You are brooding again, she said, settling into an armchair. It won't change what is done. David's jaw tightened. I failed them, Mom.
Lily, Max, Elena. Il est Victoria hurte dem, and il est Elena suffe for years.
How did I not see it? Margaret's lips pursed, her gray eyes flickering with something rare vulnerability. We both failed, she admitted, her voice low. I was harder on Elena than she deserved. I thought I was protecting you, ensuring you had a wife worthy of this family. But I was wrong.
She loved you.
Loved those children, and I drove her away. Her confession hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. David stared at his mother, the woman who'd raised him alone after his father's death, who'd never admitted fault in all his years. "Why did not you stop?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You saw how she struggled. Why keep pushing her?" Margaret's fingers tightened on her cane. "I was afraid," she said, barely above a whisper. "After your father died, you were all I had. I feared Elena would take you away, that she would never be enough to keep this family together. So I tested her, over and over. Until she broke. But I broke us too." David's throat burned. He would always seen his mother as infallible, her harshness a shield for love. Now, he saw the fear behind it, the cost of her control. "We have to fix this," he said, leaning forward. "For Lily and Max. They need their mother not just for weekends, but always. And I need to make things right with Elena." Margaret nodded, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Then we start with an apology. Her birthday is next week. We could throw a party, invite her and the children. Show her we have changed." David hesitated. Elena had kept her distance, their interactions limited to curt exchanges during custody handoffs. Would she even come? But the thought of Lily's tearful face and Max's quiet sadness spurred him on. "Let us do it," he said. "But it has to be genuine.
No manipulations.
No expectations, just us owning our mistakes." The next days buzzed with quiet preparation. David enlisted Lily and Max, whose eyes lit up at the idea of surprising their mother.
Lily pintait d'abonner, her careful letters spelling out tapis.
"Birthday, Mommy." While Max insisted on helping bake a cake, flour dusting his cheeks. Margaret, to David's surprise, took charge of the menu, opting for Elena's favorite dishes: lasagna, garlic bread, tiramisu instead of her usual formal fare. As they worked, David noticed a shift in his mother. She spoke to the children with a softness he had not seen before, praising Lily's artwork and laughing at Max's messy frosting swirls. "You are quite the chef," she told Max, ruffling his hair, and the boy beamed. David wondered if this was the grandmother Elena had always hoped for, hidden beneath years of rigidity.
The night before the party, David sat with Margaret in the living room, the house adorned with streamer and balloon.
"Do you think she will forgive us?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Margaret's gaze was distant, fixed on a photo of the family from years ago, Elena laughing, her arms around the kids. "Forgiveness is not guaranteed," she said. "But we owe her the truth. I was cruel because I was scared of losing you. And you. You were weak, David. You let her suffer to avoid conflict. We both have to face that." David nodded, the truth settling like a stone in his chest. He would been a coward, choosing peace with his mother over his wife's happiness. Elena's words from that final night haunted him: "You chose silence." He vowed to break that silence now, to show her he could be the man she would once believed in. They sent the invitation through Sarah, knowing Elena trusted her. To their relief, she agreed to come, though Sarah warned them, "She is cautious. Don't expect her to fall into your arms."
Prove you mean it.
As the party loomed, David felt a mix of hope and dread. He pictured Elena walking through the door, her hazel eyes wary but softening at the sight of Lily and Max's joy. He imagined her hearing his apology, seeing Margaret's remorse. But doubt lingered. What if she saw their effort as too little, too late? Margaret, too, wrestled with her thoughts. She sat alone that night, her cane resting against the chair, and wrote a letter to Elena, her hand trembling. "I was wrong to judge you, to belittle you. You were a better mother and wife than I gave you credit for. I hope you can forgive an old woman's pride."
She said it.
Unsure if she would have the courage to give it to her. The morning of the party, Lily and Max bounced with excitement, their chatter filling the house with life. David stood at the window, watching for Elena's car, his heart pounding. This was their chance to mend what they would broken, to show Elena they understood her worth. But as the clock ticked closer, he could not shake the fear that their regrets might not be enough to bring her back.
Chapter 8, The Birthday Surprise.
The Thompson house glowed with soft light, fairy lights twinkling along the porch and a homemade banner fluttering in the evening breeze. Inside, the dining room was transformed, streamers draped. Across the ceiling, a table laden with lasagna, garlic bread, and a slightly lopsided tiramisu crafted by Lily and Max.
The air carried the warmth of celebration.
But beneath it lay a current of nervous anticipation. David adjusted his tie, his palms damp, while Margaret smoothed her cardigan, her cane resting against the wall, a rare sign of vulnerability. Lily and Max bounced with excitement, clutching a gift they would wrap themselves, a photo frame with a picture of the three of them from Elena's last visit. "Do you think Mommy will like it?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with hope.
David knelt, squeezing her shoulder. "She will love it, sweetheart."
"Because you made it." His voice was steady, but his heart raced. Elena was due any minute, and the weight of their planned apologies pressed heavily. Would she see their effort as genuine, or just another empty gesture? The doorbell chimed, and Max sprinted to open it, Lily close behind. Elena stood on the porch, her hazel eyes wary but softening at the sight of her children. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose, a stark contrast to the tense, tightly bound woman who'd lived here months ago. "Happy birthday, Mommy," Max shouted, throwing his arms around her. Elena laughed, hugging them tightly, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, my loves." She glanced up, meeting David's gaze, then Margaret's, her expression guarded. "This is unexpected," she said, stepping inside, her voice cautious. David cleared his throat. "We wanted to do something special for you," he said, gesturing to the decorated room. "The kids worked hard. We all did." Margaret nodded, her usual sharpness dulled.
"Please, come in, Elena."
"We are glad you are here." The words were stiff, but there was a sincerity that caught Elena off guard. The dinner began with tentative warmth. Lily and Max chattered about their week, their joy infectious. Elena listened, her smile genuine, though her eyes flicked to David and Margaret, searching for their motives. The food, her favorites, stirred memories of happier times, but also the pain of those final days. She ate quietly, her heart a tangle of hope and skepticism. After dessert, Lily and Max presented their gift, their faces beaming. Elena unwrapped the frame, her breath catching at the photo, her laughing with the kids at the park.
"A moment of pure rapine."
"It is perfect," she whispered, pulling them close.
"He will treasure it forever."
David seized the moment, standing, his hands clasped tightly. "Elena, there is something we need to say," he began, his voice thick with emotion.
"He failed you."
"For years. I let Mom's harshness hurt you, and I did not stand up for you. I was weak, and I am so sorry. You deserved better, a husband who fought for you, who saw how much you gave us. I see it now, and I will spend the rest of my life proving I have changed, if you will let me." Elena's eyes widened, her fork still in hand. She looked at David, searching his face for the man she would once loved, the one buried under years of silence. His words stirred something deep. But trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been shattered. Margaret stood, her movements slow, and Elena braced herself, expecting a barb. Instead, Margaret reached into her pocket, pulling out a folded letter. "This is for you," she said, her voice unsteady. "But I will say it too, because you deserve to hear it. I was cruel, Elena. I judged you, belittled you, because I was afraid of losing David, of not being needed. You were a good wife, a better mother than I ever gave you credit for, and I drove you away. I am sorry. I hope you can forgive me." The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Elena stared at the letter, then at Margaret, her mind reeling.
Margaret, the unyielding matriarch.
Apologizing, it was unthinkable, yet the tremor in her voice, the raw honesty in her eyes, felt real. Elena's throat tightened, tears threatening to spill. "I do not know what to say," she admitted.
Her voice barely above a whisper.
"You both hurt me deeply. I spent years trying to be enough, and it broke me. But..." She looked at Lily and Max, their hopeful faces anchoring her. "I see you are trying. For the kids, I am willing to give this a chance. But it is not a reset button. Trust takes time, and I need to see change, not just hear it." David nodded, relief and guilt mingling in his expression.
"We understand. We will show you, Elena. What it take."
Margaret sat, her hands folded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. The rest of the evening softened. Lily and Max dragged Elena to the living room, showing off their banner, and David joined in, his laughter tentative but genuine. Margaret watched from the sidelines, a quiet observer, her usual dominance replaced by something humbler.
Elena felt a côte hope, like a seedling breaking through cracked earth.
She was not ready to move back, not yet, but the possibility of a healed family, for her children's sake, felt within reach. As she drove home, the letter in her purse, Elena replayed the night. David's remorse, Margaret's vulnerability, they were steps, not solutions. She thought of her apartment, her new job, the strength she would build. Whatever came next, she would not lose herself again. But for the first time in years, she felt a door to the past creaking open, and she was not afraid to step through just a little. Chapter 9: Forgiveness and Reconciliation. The familiar creak of the Thompson house's front door greeted Elena as she stepped inside, her suitcase trailing behind her. The scent of polished wood and faint lavender stirred memories, some painful, others bittersweet. It had been 3 weeks since her birthday, and after countless discussions with Sarah and her therapist, she would agreed to move back. But on her terms. This was not a surrender. It was a test, a cautious step toward rebuilding a family for Lily and Max. Her heart fluttered with hope and apprehension, unsure if the changes David and Margaret promised would hold. Lily and Max bounded down the stairs, their faces alight. "Mommy's home," Max squealed, wrapping his arms around her legs. Lily hugged her tightly, whispering, "I am so glad you are back." Elena's eyes stung as she knelt, pulling them close. Their joy was her anchor, the reason she was here, risking her heart again. David appeared, his smile tentative but warm. "Welcome home," he said, taking her suitcase. "We have set up your room, the guest suite, so you have your own space." His thoughtfulness surprised her. The old David would have assumed she would slip back into their shared bedroom. She nodded, grateful for the boundary.
Margaret stood in the living room.
Her cane absent, her posture less rigid than Elena remembered. "It is good to have you here," she said, her voice softer than its usual steel. Elena met her gaze, searching for the sharpness that had once cut her so deeply. It was there, dulled, but she remained wary. The first days were a delicate dance. David was attentive, helping with dinner, playing with the kids, even asking about her new role as manager at the accounting firm. His efforts felt genuine, though Elena caught herself bracing for the moment he would retreat into silence. Margaret, too, was different. She praised Lily's homework, read to Max, and kept her criticisms to small, manageable suggestions rather than venomous jabs. But Elena watched, waiting for the mask to slip, her trust a fragile thread. One evening, after the children were asleep, Elena found Margaret in the kitchen, brewing tea. The older woman looked up, her gray eyes catching the light. "Join me," she asked, gesturing to a second cup. Elena hesitated, then sat, the silence between them heavy but not hostile.
Margaret pourrait the tea, heure en stidi.
"I have been meaning to talk to you," she began, her voice low. "Not just to apologize again, though I know I owe you that forever. I want you to understand why I was
The way you was."
Elena sipped her tea, her guard up. "I am listening," she said, her tone neutral. Margaret's fingers traced the cup's rim, a rare tremor in her movements. "When David's father died, I was lost. He was my world, and suddenly, I was alone with a young boy to raise. I became hard, controlling, because I was terrified of failing David. When you came into our lives, I saw you as a threat, not because you were not good enough, but because I feared you would take him from me. I pushed you, tested you, to prove you would stay. Instead, I pushed you away." Elena's chest tightened. She would imagined Margaret's cruelty stemmed from disdain, not fear. The revelation did not erase the pain, but it gave it context, a human flaw behind the monster she would faced. "You hurt me, Margaret," she said, her voice steady but raw.
Every day, you made me feel worthless.
"I lost pieces of myself trying to please you."
Margaret's eyes glistened, a tear escaping.
"I know," she whispered. "I see it now, how strong you were, how you loved this family despite me. I do not expect forgiveness, but I am trying to be better for you, for the children." Elena looked away, her emotions churning. She thought of Lily's laughter, Max's trust, the life she wanted for them. Holding on to anger would only poison that future. "I can forgive you," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "But it does not mean forgetting."
I need respect, Margaret. No more jugement, no more control.
"If you cross that line, I am gone for good." Margaret nodded, relief softening her face.
I understand.
"And I will prove it, not just with words." The conversation lingered in Elena's mind as weeks passed. David continued to show change, attending therapy to confront his passivity, and even stood up to Margaret when she slipped into old habits. A sharp mom, enough that left Elena stunned. Margaret, true to her word, kept her critiques minimal, and once when Elena came home late from work, she found dinner waiting, a quiet gesture of support. Lily and Max thrived, their laughter filling the house. Elena watched them play in the backyard, David pushing Max on the swing, and felt a cautious warmth. This was not the family she dreamed of years ago. It was scarred, imperfect, but it was healing. She joined them, lifting Lily into her arms, and for a moment, the past felt distant. Yet, Elena held her boundaries. She kept her job, her therapy, her apartment lease as a safety net. She shared moments with David, quiet talks over coffee, a tentative brush of hands, but she was not ready to fully open her heart. Trust, she would learned, was earned slowly, and she was no longer the woman who'd give herself away. As she tucked the kids into bed that night, Max yawned, clutching her hand. "Are you happy now, Mommy?" he asked. Elena smiled, kissing his forehead.
"Yeah, I'm getting there, sweetheart."
"And I am here with you, which makes me happier than anything." Alone in her room, she pulled out Margaret's letter from her birthday, rereading the words of remorse. Forgiveness was a choice, not a cure, but it was a step toward peace. She placed the letter in a drawer, a reminder of how far they would come and how far she would go to protect the life she was rebuilding.
Chapter 10, A Family Reborn. The Thompson house buzzed with the key rhythm of a Saturday morning, sunlight streaming through the windows as Elena flipped pancake in the kitchen.
Lily and Max sat at the counter, giggling as they drizzled syrup, their chatter a melody of healing. 3 months had passed since Elena moved back, and the family had settled into a fragile but hopeful harmony. David's steady efforts and Margaret's softened demeanor had built a foundation of trust, though Elena kept her guard, her strength honed by years of survival. But peace, she would learned, was often a prelude to storms. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, cutting through the morning's warmth.
David, reading the paper,
frowned and rose to answer it. Elena's stomach twisted a premonition she could not shake. Victoria stood on the porch, her blonde hair sleek, her red lips curved in a venomous smile. "Hello, David," she purred, her voice dripping with malice. "Miss me?"
Davides Facade.
"What are you doing here?" he demanded, blocking the doorway. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing, Lily and Max peering curiously from the kitchen. Victoria's eyes flicked to Elena, glinting with spite. "I heard you crawled back," she said, her tone mocking. "Thought I would drop by, stir things up. You did not think I would just disappear, did you?" She held up a stack of papers, waving them like a weapon. "I have been digging, Elena."
Your little promotion, shady accounting practice. One call to your boss.
"And you are done. And David, those late-night client meetings, I have photos that could ruin your career." Elena's blood ran cold, but she forced her voice steady. "You are bluffing," she said, stepping beside David.
"Get out, Victoria.
"You are not welcome here." Margaret appeared, her cane tapping, her gray eyes blazing. "You heard her," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Leave, or I will call the police."
Victoria loged, infazed.
"Oh, Margaret, still playing queen, I am not here to negotiate."
"You want money Alpha Million, or you leak everything."
"You have got until tomorrow." She tossed the papers at David's feet and sauntered off, her heels clicking on the pavement.
The family stood frozen, the threat hanging like a guillotine.
David scooped up the papers, his hands shaking as he scanned them. Forged documents, blurry photos. Enough to cast doubt if exposed. "She is serious," he muttered, his face pale. Lily clutched Elena's hand, her voice trembling. "Mommy, is she going to hurt us again?"
Elena knelt, pulling her clothes.
"No."
"Sweetheart. I won't tell her."
Her voice was firm, but fear gnawed at her. Victoria's return was not just a threat, it was a test of the family's newfound unity. In the living room, they gathered, the papers spread on the coffee table. Elena took charge, her manager's instinct kicking in. "She wants us to panic," she said, her eyes scanning the documents. "But these are flimsy half-truths at best. We need to stay calm and fight back." David nodded, his jaw set. "I will call my lawyer." We can countersue for harassment, maybe defamation. She has overplayed her hand. Margaret's lips pursed, but her voice was steady. I have contacts at the bank. If she is blackmailing us, she has likely done it before. We can dig into her past, find leverage. Elena looked at them, a surge of pride mixing with her fear. This was the family she would fought for, not perfect, but united. We do this together, she said.
Nos secrets, nos renings. Victoria Wonte Breques.
By evening, their plan was in motion. David's lawyer confirmed the documents were largely fabricated, inadmissible in court. Margaret's contacts uncovered Victoria's history of scams. Enough to discredit her threats. Elena, meanwhile, met with her boss, disclosing the situation to protect her job. His support bolstered her resolve. The next morning, Victoria returned, expecting surrender. Instead, she faced the family on the porch, Elena in front, David and Margaret flanking her, Lily and Max safe inside.
Your game est over.
Elena said, holding up a folder of evidence.
We know your scam, your lies.
One move, and we go to the police. Leave, and do not come back. Victoria's smile faltered, her eyes darting to the folder. You are bluffing, she spat, but her voice wavered. Try us, David said, his tone unwavering. Margaret stepped forward, her cane tapping, a silent promise of retribution. Victoria hesitated, then turned, her confidence crumbling. You will regret this, she hissed, but her retreat was swift, her car speeding away.
The family exhaled, the tension breaking like a storm passing.
Inside, Lily and Max ran to Elena, their hugs grounding her. You scared her away, Max cheered, and Elena laughed, kissing his forehead. That night, they sat together, the house no longer a battleground but a home. David reached for Elena's hand, his touch tentative. I am proud of you, he said softly. You led us through this. Elena squeezed his hand, a flicker of warmth in her chest. We did it together, she corrected, glancing at Margaret, who nodded, a rare smile softening her face. As the kids slept,
Elena stood on the porch, the star bright above.
She thought of the woman she would been broken, silent, afraid, and the woman she would become, strong, vocal, whole. The journey had been painful, but it had forged a family worth fighting for. She felt David's presence beside her, Margaret's quiet support inside, and the love of her children anchoring her heart. Elena closed her eyes, the night air cool against her skin. She was home, not just in this house, but in herself. And in that moment, she knew peace not perfect, but hers, earned through every tear and triumph.